a young queen defiantly wearing her grandmother's diamonds while her uncle sues her in court. A duchess whose signature pearl necklace becomes the key evidence in Britain's most scandalous divorce trial. A princess fleeing a palace in the dead of night, leaving behind millions in jewels. A Swiss courtroom where a $27 million collection hangs in the balance. For over 2 centuries, when royal marriages crumble, the most spectacular battles haven't been fought over castles or crowns. They've been waged over the glittering treasures that once symbolized eternal love. Today, we're unlocking the vault of history's most dramatic jewelry wars, where diamonds became weapons, pearls turned into damning evidence, and tiaras transformed from symbols of devotion into contested spoils that could destroy dynasties. From a Victorian queen who spent 20 years fighting her own family, to a modern princess whose jewels became her lifeline to freedom, these aren't just stories about precious stones. They're tales of women who discovered that sometimes the greatest battle isn't for love. It's for the right to keep what's yours when that love turns to litigation. The Young Queen's Defiance, Victoria versus her uncle. Our story begins in 1837, when 18-year-old Queen Victoria inherited the British throne under circumstances that would ignite a 20-year legal war over some of history's most precious jewels. The treasure in question dated back to Queen Victoria's grandmother, Queen Charlotte, who had amassed a dazzling collection of diamonds and pearls as Queen of Great Britain and Electress of Hanover. In her will, Charlotte declared that her jewels should go to the House of Hanover after her death. For decades, this hadn't been an issue, since the British and Hanoverian crowns were united on one head. But Victoria's accession suddenly raised a thorny question. Which House of Hanover did Charlotte mean, the British royal family or the German one? Victoria's uncle, Ernest Augustus, who had become King of Hanover, certainly believed the answer was his side of the family. Shortly after Victoria became queen, he demanded the return of Queen Charlotte's jewels to Hanover. These pieces included a historic diamond tiara, a sumptuous pearl necklace, and other heirlooms worn by generations of Hanoverian queens. At issue was not only immense monetary value. Some estimates put the haul at up to £1 million, an astronomical sum in the 1850s, but also national pride. Many in Britain argued the jewels had been purchased with English funds and ought to remain in England. Victoria, however, had physical possession of the jewels in Britain, and she was determined not to part with them. What began as a family inheritance dispute escalated into an international incident, pitting a young queen against her uncle in a battle that would define her early reign. By 1839, Ernest made it official, filing a bill in Chancery in Britain to force Victoria to hand over the jewels. The legal argument centred on whether these items were personal gifts and heirlooms belonging to the Hanoverian dynasty, or simply part of the British Crown property. While much of the battle happened in stuffy Chancery chambers, there was no shortage of drama and personal animosity. Queen Victoria, though initially upset by the lawsuit, soon steeled herself and even used the jewels as an armament of defiance. She wore Charlotte's jewels frequently and visibly, as if to underscore her rights. In fact, Victoria had some pieces remodelled to suit her tastes and then flaunted them on state occasions. This deeply provoked her uncle Ernest. In 1844, 6 years into the suit, he erupted in anger upon reading a newspaper report that the little queen had recently attended a city function wearing my tiara. The press had picked up on Victoria's subtle snub, and so had her uncle. It was a duel of wills conducted through jewels. Victoria relished shining in the contested gems, and Ernest Augustus fumed from afar. The fight dragged on through the 1840s and 1850s without resolution, even as both aunt and uncle stubbornly held their ground. After nearly 2 decades of legal wrangling, the battle reached its conclusion in 1857. A special judicial commission ultimately decided in favour of Hanover's claim. In principle, Queen Victoria lost. However, this climax came with an anticlimax. By 1857, Ernest was gone, and his successor had bigger problems. Perhaps sensing changing winds, Hanover's new king relinquished claims on many pieces. In the end, the Hanoverians recovered only a fraction of what they sought, notably Queen Charlotte's small diamond nuptial crown and a few other diamond ornaments. Queen Victoria, despite the formal legal loss, contrived to keep the most splendid items, including her beloved strand of Hanoverian family pearls, which she had paraded so proudly. The settlement was a compromise, but Victoria was reportedly bitter about having to surrender even a part of the treasure. This Victorian jewel fight left a lasting mark on royal property law, highlighting the importance of clarifying crown versus personal property. After this episode, Victoria took steps to prevent similar disputes, identifying certain key jewels as heirlooms of the crown to be passed from monarch to monarch rather than personal assets that could be willed away. The Duchess of Windsor, love's glittering price. Fast forward to the 1930s, and we encounter a different kind of royal jewellery drama, one where love, rather than law, determined the fate of spectacular treasures. When King Edward VIII abdicated the throne in 1936 to marry Wallis Simpson, he ensured that their subsequent life together was defined by personal opulence, replacing the crown they had foregone. Edward showered Wallis with extravagant jewellery throughout their relationship, resulting in her accumulating one of the largest and most expensive collections of jewels in the world. These pieces were often custom designed by the likes of Cartier, Van Cleef and Arpels, and Bulgari, sometimes incorporating hidden romantic inscriptions and symbols. The famous Cartier Panther bracelet, her cross charm bracelet, and a 19.77 carat emerald engagement ring were all imbued with personal significance. But this treasure came with shadows. Rumours swirled that the Windsors didn't always pay their jeweller bills in a timely way. Author Christopher Wilson claimed, "The Duke and Duchess of Windsor loved expensive jewellery, but didn't enjoy paying for it," alleging that some London and New York jewellers were never fully reimbursed for commissions. Within the royal family, Wallis's jewels caused resentment too. Queen Mary and others were reportedly aghast at how many family heirlooms or significant gems Edward gifted away during his brief reign and after. Mary once showed a courtier a particularly splendid piece Edward had commissioned for Wallis and said bitterly, "He gives Mrs. Simpson the most beautiful jewels." The legal reality of her ownership was unquestionable. The jewels were personal marital gifts. This set a counter-precedent to crown ownership, proving that personal funds and lavish gifting could successfully buy a separate form of royal glamour and recognition, immune from the restrictions applied to dynastic or state-owned items. When Wallis Simpson, Duchess of Windsor, passed away in 1986, she left her estate, including her jewellery, largely to the Pasteur Institute in France. In April 1987, her executors put her jewellery collection up for auction in Geneva. This sale was epoch-making, realising $50.28 million and shattering all records for a single-owner jewellery collection at that time, over 7 times the pre-sale estimate. The auction became known as the Sale of the Century, with society journalists dubbing it a moment when the entire British royal family's complicated relationship with the Windsors was finally resolved through commerce rather than conflict. The pearls that became evidence, the Duchess of Argyll. Moving forward to the swinging 60s, we encounter one of the most scandalous divorce cases in British history, one where jewellery played not just a financial role, but became the crucial piece of evidence that would destroy a woman's reputation forever. The divorce of Margaret Campbell and Ian Campbell, the 11th Duke of Argyll, was a venomous legal saga that captivated Britain in the 1960s. exposing the decay beneath the veneer of high society. The Duke, desperate for a settlement and prone to substance abuse, suspected his wealthy wife of numerous infidelities. But the centerpiece of the courtroom drama wasn't the Duchess herself. It was her signature three-strand pearl necklace, an heirloom inherited from her grandmother and rarely absent from her neck in society photographs. The legal confrontation began when the Duke illegally hired a locksmith to break into a locked cabinet at their London home. Inside, he discovered dozens of explicit Polaroid photographs. One image, the infamous headless man photo, showed the Duchess naked, engaged in a compromising act with a man whose face was cropped out. Here's where the jewelry became crucial evidence. The necklace, rarely absent from her neck, served as the corpus delicti, the physical evidence that sealed her identification. Even without her face visible, the distinctive 3 strings of pearls confirmed Margaret's identity beyond doubt, satisfying the Duke's evidentiary burden in court. The judge subsequently granted the divorce, condemning the Duchess for engaging in disgusting sexual activities. This case became pivotal because the jewelry's financial or dynastic status was irrelevant. Its provenance as a unique identifier became its legal significance. The pearls transformed from a beautiful symbol of high society glamour into the primary forensic tool used to strip the Duchess of her reputation and privacy. The Argyll dispute demonstrated that in high-profile legal battles, personal jewelry could inadvertently be weaponized, turning a treasured heirloom into a piece of damning evidence that linked the wearer to contested facts. The emotional cost was devastating. Margaret had worn those pearls as symbols of her heritage and status, never imagining they would become the instruments of her public humiliation. The case showed how jewelry, meant to enhance and protect a woman's image, could be turned against her in the most intimate and destructive way possible. The princess who fought for her freedom. Our journey through time brings us to the summer of 1995, when a Swiss courtroom became the unlikely stage for one of history's most glittering battles. Princess Salimah Aga Khan, born Sally Croker Poole in England, had lived a life of unimaginable luxury during her 25-year marriage to Prince Karim Aga Khan IV, the spiritual leader of 12 million Ismaili Muslims. Their union had been the stuff of fairy tales, a glamorous British model swept into a world of private jets, international society, and jewels that would make queens envious. Legendary jewelers like Van Cleef and Arpels, Boucheron, Cartier and Harry Winston had crafted pieces just for her. By the 1980s, Begum Salimah's trove included highlights such as the Begum Blue Diamond, a heart-shaped 13.78-carat blue diamond set amid 41 smaller heart diamonds in a necklace, and sumptuous emerald suites and ruby tiaras. But by 1995, the fairy tale had shattered. When Salimah announced her intention to auction her magnificent jewelry collection at Christie's Geneva, she framed it as an act of compassion. She wanted to establish a charitable foundation to help underprivileged children around the world. "I have only got 1 pair of ears and 1 neck," she told Hello magazine, "and the sale has enabled me to live a more balanced life." Her motivations may have been noble, but her ex-husband had other plans. Just weeks before the scheduled auction, the Aga Khan's lawyers descended upon Swiss courts with a dramatic legal maneuver. Their argument was both strategic and steeped in tradition. Under the terms of their divorce agreement, the bulk of Princess Salimah's jewelry had to remain within the Aga Khan's family unless she needed to sell for financial reasons. The centerpiece of the dispute was breathtaking: the Begum Blue, which Christie's estimated would fetch around £4.5 million alone. Beyond this showstopper, the collection included over 250 pieces of extraordinary jewelry designed by the world's most prestigious houses. The courtroom drama intensified as both sides marshaled their arguments. the Aga Khan's team painted a picture of religious and cultural duty. These were not merely baubles, but pieces with deep significance to the Ismaili Muslim community. Princess Salimah's lawyers countered that these were gifts freely given during the marriage, pieces selected specifically for her, many custom designed to suit her personal style. The emotional stakes were staggering. This wasn't just about money or jewelry. It was about identity, autonomy, and the right to chart one's own course after divorce. For Salimah, the jewelry represented her years of service as the Begum, the sacrifices she'd made, the public role she'd performed. On November 10, 1995, the Geneva Appeals Court delivered its verdict. Princess Salimah could proceed with the auction. The court ruled that she could sell the majority of her jewels, though 23 pieces worth approximately $200,000 had to remain within the family. 3 days later, on November 13, 1995, the auction commenced in an atmosphere of electric anticipation. The bidding was fierce, with buyers from the Middle East, Gulf states, and international dealers competing for pieces of this storied collection. When the gavel fell on the final lot, the total exceeded all expectations, $27.3 million, nearly double the pre-sale estimate. Princess Salimah's victory represented more than a legal win. It was a landmark moment in how divorce courts viewed jewelry ownership. The case established that gifts given during marriage, even in royal and ultra-wealthy contexts, could be considered the personal property of the recipient unless explicitly stated otherwise in the divorce agreement. The escape from the golden cage. Our final story brings us to the most extraordinary royal jewelry dispute of our modern era. The divorce between Princess Haya of Jordan and Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum culminated in 2021 as the largest financial divorce settlement ever awarded by a UK court, exceeding £554 million. When Princess Haya, daughter of the late King Hussein of Jordan, fled Dubai in May 2019 in fear of her life with her 2 children, she was forced to leave behind virtually all her substantial personal possessions, including a magnificent private jewelry collection that had been built over 15 years of marriage to one of the world's richest men. This collection became a central quantified claim within the British family court. Princess Haya claimed £52 million in compensation for missing clothing and jewellery. She estimated her haute couture collection at €74 million, claiming only basic items were returned after she fled to Britain. Much of her jewellery, including diamonds, pearls, sapphires and emeralds, was left in a Dubai palace and had since gone missing. "If you were to spread all the pieces in that room across this courtroom, it would be filled," Haya testified. "I was spoiled with wonderful gifts that I cherished immensely at the time." The court was shown a 23-minute video of a safe being opened in a Dubai palace where her jewellery was stored. The judge noted that remaining items appeared to be pretty standard fare. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn that reads like a thriller novel. The court heard evidence that Princess Haya had been blackmailed by members of her security staff over an affair she had with one of them. She had made several payments to 4 staff members, some from her children's bank accounts. To correct this, she testified she had sold jewellery valued at over £1 million and had been forced to sell more to make ends meet while awaiting the final settlement. The detail that Princess Haya had to sell jewellery to pay off blackmailers and fund her escape added a dramatic, almost novelistic touch that made her plight deeply relatable. It echoed classic tales of a princess pawning her jewels to survive, transforming diamonds from symbols of luxury into literal lifelines to freedom. Judge Moore awarded Princess Haya £13.7 million specifically for the missing jewellery and £1 million for lost clothing. The jewellery compensation became part of a massive one-off payment of £251.5 million, which also covered upkeep of UK properties, money owed for racehorses, and future security costs. The total settlement reached £554 million, the highest ever in British family court history. Princess Haya's case demonstrated how jewellery disputes in modern royal divorces could involve not just ownership questions, but also issues of forced asset liquidation, blackmail, and the use of jewellery as emergency financial resources during protracted legal battles. The evolution of justice. These battles, spanning over 2 centuries, reveal a fascinating evolution in how societies viewed marital property, women's rights, and the nature of royal privilege. In the late 19th century, wives had to return all jewellery, including engagement and wedding rings, if their marriages ended. By the late 20th century, this had transformed dramatically. Women's jewellery became recognised as personal property, presumed to belong to the recipient unless specifically stated otherwise. The fate of a dynastic jewel is often predetermined by the jurisdiction in which the divorce is filed. A crucial distinction exists between the English legal approach, which prioritises financial equity and generous interpretation of needs, and the continental European approach, which prioritises the preservation of genealogical patrimony through rigid legal structures. Modern high-stakes divorces have evolved beyond the simple argument of who gets to keep the jewellery. Princess Haya's staggering award of over £13.7 million specifically for lost jewels demonstrates the UK court's modern strategy of assigning massive quantifiable value to luxury items that are irretrievable due to threats or duress. From Queen Victoria's defiant display of contested pearls in 1837 to Princess Haya's desperate sale of diamonds to fund her escape in 2019, these glittering battles reveal a profound truth about power, love, and the price of freedom. Each story, separated by decades or centuries, shares a common thread. Women discovering that their greatest battle isn't always for love. It's for the fundamental right to determine their own destiny. The Duchess of Argyll's tragic tale reminds us that this fight for autonomy came at different costs for different women. While some, like Princess Salimah, could transform their jewellery into symbols of independence, others, like Margaret Campbell, saw their most treasured pieces become instruments of their destruction. Her story stands as a sobering reminder of how far we've come in protecting women's rights and dignity. The royal jewellery that sparked these divorce wars became more than mere ornaments. They transformed into symbols of identity, weapons of defiance, evidence in legal battles, and ultimately, stepping stones to independence. If these stories of courage, resilience, and the fight for independence moved you, please give this video a like. It helps us share these powerful tales with more people who appreciate the complex stories behind royal history. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the fascinating world of royal jewels and the extraordinary women who wore them. Because sometimes the most valuable treasures are the stories that remind us of our own strength